Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Michael Hall. The title of today's episode is the Titanic Recap of the bludgeoning of the Tennessee Titans 42-19. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. Hall, what's your immediate look? This was the perfect outcome Washington could have wanted for this football game. Going into the bye week, lost the last 3 games, come into this game, absolutely dominate the beginning of it, then be able to kind of, even though lose a little bit in the middle there, they pulled away at the end. So what's your immediate reaction?
It was what I was gonna say. I thought the game would be last weekend, and it was the narrative killer game. I think that this game killed a lot of narrative as far as the Cliff goes. Obviously, Cliff called a really good game today. Offense was humming, run game was going great. It was them getting back to beating what I call the tomato cans. They were smashing the tomato can teams. And I know people will say it was a bad team. It was against the Titans, blah, 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 blah. But this was a defense that was allowing, I think, 260-something yards per game on the ground, or 106 yards per game on the ground, 260-something yards per game total, I think. And we bludgeoned them for almost 500 yards of total offense today. Just a complete, total, dominant win. Would like to see a little bit more turnovers by the defense because they were Will Levis was definitely putting it out there for them to be had. But all in all, great, dominant win. And this was the narrative killer game just because they killed a lot of narratives. They killed the Cliff narrative. They killed the narrative of, oh, this is a team that just had a fast start and they're kind of coming back to earth. And they got back to doing what they do best, which is beating up on teams that they should.
Yep, you're absolutely right about that. And look, Tennessee obviously did not help their case early on in that game. I think they had over 10 penalties. I think it was 12 in total for the game. Then Washington kind of fixed that later on. But you can obviously see that Washington did a very good job of just not allowing this thing to go off the rails, so to speak. And speaking of going off the rails, now we are joined by our other co-host, Mr. Michael Reed.
The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town.
Siri, go ahead and cue the boys are back in town by Thin Lizzy. Let's get this going.
Yes, and we're not going to include what Reed had said last week before we started recording.
Dude, I was being such a fat brat. I didn't care. I was like, fuck the Commanders, dude. How dare they treat me like this? It's so funny, too, because I was on such a fat brat mode. I was like, I'm not wasting any more time promoting this team if this is the product they put out on the field. Like, my fat ass and my 100 views matter.
Right.
But, sometimes you got to take a stand.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You got to stand up for yourself. But
if it wasn't for me, they would be nobody. They'd be an XFL team.
Right, Hall, to your point about this team dominating, they had 28 first downs to the Titans 12. On third downs, the Commanders were 8 of 13, where the Titans were 5 of 12. But the two big kickers for this stat line is in the red zone. Washington was 5 for 7, where the Titans were 1 for 2. And the time of possession, Washington had over 40 minutes of time of possession, where the Titans only had 19 minutes and 47 seconds. So that is just huge in itself, just showing that from start to finish, Washington truly did control this game. And obviously the turnovers were huge. I think before I get your reaction, Reed, I just want to say Mikey Sanders still ripping that ball out from Tony Pollard early on in that game was a huge momentum shift. And then the kickoff, obviously, of them fumbling it away. Tyler Owens getting in there and ripping it, being able to pry that ball loose. Washington really started out that game the way they're supposed to. It's been the complete opposite of what they've done over the past 3 games. But this one was completely different because we came in saying Tennessee's getting kind of hot right now because they just beat the Texans, who everyone knows is a very, very good football team. But Reed, what's your immediate reaction from this game? As somebody who was a fat brat last weekend, what is your immediate reaction now?
I loved it, Kyle. I loved it from start to finish. That first quarter doesn't get better than that. Doesn't get any better than that. Thought that we were letting it go a little bit in the middle of the game, but it's a bit unrealistic to think that you're going to keep the first quarter up the entire game. This is the NFL, and the Tennessee Titans. Like you said, they've proven it. They've proven it. They've beaten some good teams. They've got some playmakers over there. But the most important thing is we put we put our foot on their throat, and we stomped the shit out of them. And that's all. And that's the most important part, and that's the fun part. I love watching deaths. I've been getting a lot of death videos on Twitter lately, and so that's my thing.
That's your kick.
Yeah.
You're right. And my instant reaction is this is exactly what they needed to show going into the bye week. Over the past 3 weeks, they've really struggled to being able to run the football in really crucial and important situations. Like, I think they showed a graphic at one point, like Washington in their wins rushed for over 200 yards, or it was like 196, and they only rushed for 96 yards in their losses. And so this game, whereas they know that they're coming out running the football, trying to be able to delete that clock in the fourth quarter. And then here comes Chris Rodriguez, who had 13 carries, 94 yards, and 1 touchdown. So 7.2 on the ground that he averaged. That's just another example of what Washington inflicting their will. And the offensive line, I think, gets huge credit for this game. So before we go any further, let's give out some game beers. Hall, who's somebody that's getting your game beer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I got to go with the obvious one in Chris Rodriguez. Kudos to him for getting cut and then just like staying around, staying ready, coming back. I think it was 8 days later, and he's on the field, has a big game, scores a touchdown. Yeah, just shows and proves that he deserves at least at the minimum to be on the practice squad, and he's a guy that they can rely on at any time down the stretch. Say B Rob gets nicked up, or say it's a blowout win, they want to give B Rob some rest.
Exactly,
He's
yes.
a guy that can come in and still carry the load, still do what B Rob does, and yeah, so definitely kudos to him. Kick his feet up. You know what? Don't even chug the beer. Sip this one. You get to enjoy this one.
Yeah, maybe I'm gonna spill my yak. I agree with you. I do think Jaden Daniels and himself. I know this is an easy one, but he has really looked to form the past couple weeks. He was 25 of 30, 206 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 9 rushes for 34 yards, and another touchdown. I think it's easy to say that Washington fans are going to dominate the Rookie of the Week award again, and Jaden is going to win this one, and he wholeheartedly deserves to do so. He has shown the accuracy has been on point. That Terry McLaurin second touchdown, just putting it on that slant, right? And the first Terry McLaurin touchdown where he's escaping to his left, having to throw that ball up, and he does it perfectly by just floating that ball in there to Terry. You don't have to dart it. You don't have to throw it on a rope, which Jaden has shown in those crucial downs to kind of like, force those things in there, and he sometimes forces them too high, which is another example of that interception he had today where it's just putting on a rope, throwing it too hard, too high, and it then gets bobbled and intercepted. But that Terry McLaurin one, it was much more so of that touch, just let that thing drop in there, let him catch it. And then towards the end of that game, I think it was a 3rd and 2, where he escapes out of his left, has to rotate his body and just throw that ball in there to Terry, who obviously caught it low to extend the drive. But just showing you the maturation of Jaden, where I think he's back to normal at this point, and he's definitely showing like it. So he's getting a game beer from me. But he's in the VIP lounge. He's chilling with his bottle of Grey Goose that's with sparklers on it. What about you, Reed?
Well, I just want to say, first and foremost, I love that Rodriguez is running for his citizenship because, come January 20th, he's going to need that
Come
if he
on,
wants to stay.
man.
I'm just, no, I'm going to go with somebody who's a little bit different. And it's been all year. Frankie Louvu, just what he brings to his defense as a
Yeah.
pass rusher in the pass game, he's swatting balls like he's Ben Wallace in the mid 2000s. Like it's every game, it's multiple batted passes. He does it all. He gets after the quarterback. He plays the
There was
run. He's
another
back
joke
there.
coming off of that.
I was thinking about it.
What was it? Go ahead, Kyle. Fill me in.
Unlike you on Saturdays.
What? Why would you say that?
Because you catch them, you don't swat them.
Yeah, that's true. I'm like an astronaut. Have you ever seen astronauts eat? Oh, oh, they drink water. Oh, oh. But yeah, man. Frankie Louvu, just what a revelation he's been. He's having a six Samoan too. That's always fun. That's always tight. They're so scary. I watched Moana too. Let me tell you, they're terrifying people.
Frankie Louvu had 3 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 quarterback hits in this game. Early in that game, dude, he was bringing the energy. He was getting after Will Levis. There was multiple times where he forced incompletions, like you said. He swatted that one ball down early. Then late in that game, he was able to get around the left tackle, tip that ball out, which ended up being a pass interference penalty on Bobby Wagner. But Frankie Louvu, early and often in that game, really showcased his energy and something that we like. Obviously, it was evident in Philly and against the Steelers where Frankie was all over the field. But this was another instance where like he is everywhere, dude, and really being able to get after people. Is there anybody else you want to give a shout out game beer to, guys?
I mean,
I'd
obviously,
say
Mikey Sanders still.
I was literally about to say Mikey Sanders
Yeah.
still.
They're just great minds. That's just
Yeah.
what we do.
He
Great
led the
guy.
team.
I'll let you take it because my analysis would be
He led the
pointless.
team in tackles with 7, 1 pass deflection, which was on that 2-point conversion play, which was absolutely beautifully played. And he also had the forced fumble early on in that game. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was gonna name off all those things, and he was just a guy that kind of like Frankie Louvu. You could just tell from the very beginning of the game, he was just all about the energy, bringing the energy, and he was just a guy that just flashed off your screen, flying all over the screen from play one till the end of the game. So definitely, I guess he was juiced up from that Michigan upset over Ohio State. So
Yeah.
definitely, Mikey Sanders still
Uh,
deserves that one.
Somebody else who, I mean, he didn't show up like as much in the stats column, but like just over the last 2 months, Jeremy Chin, dude, he's been everywhere. You hear
Yeah.
his name called literally almost every play. Like he's always around the ball. He's flying around. He's got to learn how to catch a little bit, but that's okay. That's neither here nor there. I still love what he's doing back there.
There was a bunch of opportunities to catch a football
Yeah,
defense today.
I was like, no, we're like allergic to interceptions or something, man. It's like
yeah.
crazy.
And that's the funny thing is that Joe Whitehead said that in his press conference. Like this is like not. I'm not used to not getting this many turnovers as a defensive coordinator. Everywhere that I've gone, we've had the ability to actually get those turnovers. So Mikey starts out that game in a right way, but then there's so many opportunities. Like Frankie Louvu had one literally bobbled right in front and hit him in the chest that he could have caught. But look, like they did a good job, except for I will say there was a lot. I knew going into this game. I said on Wednesday's show. Obviously, you guys weren't here, but Tennessee does a great job of throwing the deep ball. Kenny Westbrook is somebody I really pointed out to. He had like 17 receptions for 7 touchdowns coming into this game. Obviously, matched that up to what I think 9 now. But he's somebody you have to keep your eye on, along with Ridley. Ridley had the yips today.
Yeah.
Not being able
I think he took the under on himself, so he purposely didn't perform.
Dude, there were some of those catches that he should have been able to
There.
bring in, and he didn't. But they were giving up things in the middle of the zone. We saw that last week against the Cowboys, where that one tight end Schoonmaker gets a touchdown on. This game, there's another. It's rearing its ugly head again, where they're allowing that zone coverage to be able to get picked apart a little bit, and then allowing things deep. But this was the perfect game for Washington to come into, and I think the offensive line all deserve game beers for how they played today. They obviously kept Jane Daniels to only 1 sack given up. They ran the ball an effective amount, man. I think the average on the ground has to be well over 7, if I'm not mistaken, or possibly more. I don't know what Jaden's average was. What with 9 rushes for 34 yards, that would bring it down probably a little bit less than 6. But they ground and pound. They were able to run the football effectively. And another one that gets a game beer is Brian Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
16 carries, 103 yards, 1 touchdown, 6.4 average on the ground, and 1 catch for 6 yards. That was the longest touchdown of his career, that 39-yard rusher at the beginning of the game, which really set the tone for everything. But my goodness, does Brian deserve it? He's been banged up himself, but you did not sense it in this game. His presence was felt early and often, very Derrick Henry-esque. Anybody else, Reed?
How about somebody who's been flown under the radar a lot, just with like the way that the Brady Coleman and stuff and badass over there in the middle, but that greasy Italian Allegretti, he's been holding his own, man. He's been good. You don't hear his name a lot, and that's a good thing for an offensive lineman.
Absolutely. Like that first touchdown run by Brian Robinson, they pull Brandon Coleman and Allegretti to the right side, and they seal that outside up very, very well. We got lucky that they weren't looking at Bates on that play. Did get with a little hook with his left hand on the linebacker there, but I'm not going to be complaining about anything.
It's a Allegretti. Allegretti.
And then
He's a very, very Italian.
the Chris Rodriguez touchdown run, Brandon Coleman takes the DN and just drives him into the earth, sealing the outside there for the inside seal, and he just runs right behind him for that touchdown. Offensive line, they deserve credit. They've been beat up, but they really came back in this game and made their presence felt. So a lot of credit. You guys deserve game beers. Now, going into the bye week, what are you expecting with this football team, Reed? What are some things that still need to be worked on? Even though this was a dominating victory, we do have to take the good and the bad.
I think it's clearly important for them to get the running game going. Like you already touched on, like without the running game, this offense really can't do much. So much just comes off of that, and you saw that early on, and like they dominated when they were running the ball, and then towards in the early third quarter and stuff, they kind of slowed down a little bit. They weren't getting the yards that they used to, and there's some short drives and punts, and that kind of allowed Tennessee to kind of swing the momentum that they never fully got it. But that's something that you really want to see Cliff, and that's kind of been what's been happening during our losses is they haven't really approached the run game like they should have, or they haven't been getting big chunk plays. And it's so dangerous with somebody like Jaden Daniels who can hurt you with your legs that you got to get that going because just from that threat standpoint, we'll kind of open things up. So I'd like to see them, but also having a bye week this late in the year sucks. It's so dumb, but is what it is. And now we got it, and now we just roll.
Yeah, and I know that Quan Martin already had a shoulder strap on him when he went for that hit on the sideline that knocked him out, probably a stinger. But really having to look at this defense, they do a good job when they are stifling the line of scrimmage and controlling the trenches, getting that pressure on the quarterback, which we saw a lot of it on Will Levis today. They were able to keep him in the pocket. He wasn't escaping out and getting a lot of yardage. But in the same breath, they are giving up those big plays. Again today, you saw Ridley running past Benjamin St. Juste, right? And luckily, one of them was overthrown, where Jeremy Chin on Akwaku was able to get over top of him for a big and pass interference there.
Akwaku's really good, by the way.
He is.
We knew that he was good, but like just he catches everything.
Yeah, he does. And look, that's one thing that this defense, obviously they're going to be looking to get Lattimore back going against the Saints in 2 weeks. But in this bye week, it's really going to be, for me, one thing that they got to work on is being able to nullify those big plays. Because when you're up 28-0, you have to eliminate the big plays. You have to force them to tick by the field, be able to take as much time as possible, because at that point, time is your enemy. And that's one thing that Washington, I think, overall lacks, especially like Hall, we've talked about it many times. Late in the games, they kind of allow these teams to come back in it, and that big play is what really deters you, really stifles you from being able to close those teams out. And so today the difference was being able to run the football and be able to liquidate that clock late in the fourth quarter. But for me, it's those big plays, especially the passing game. Running game was stout today. They really did hold them in check. I don't even think they got 100 yards rushing.
Yeah, well, I expect them to get not all that stuff, but I expect them to take a nice step in the right direction with the stuff that you just mentioned, just for the simple fact of I expect the defense to be coming out of the bye week. I expect them to be charged up and juiced up and have a little bit more oomph in their step because they're getting a guy like Lattimore back on the field, and it's going against his former team. So this is going to mean a little bit more to him, and I think that the defense is going to want to come out and put on a good performance, not only for obviously the team, but obviously for him as well. So I think they're going to take some steps in the right direction with that. And, I expect the offense to get rested up, Cliff to come out, and for him to keep evolving the offense and keep on scheming up what he's been doing, and them just to everybody to get healthy, especially up front on the line, because obviously we saw today where when you got mostly guys that are mostly healthy up front and they're going to be able to get a good push, as we talked about the run game, like you talked about with the graphic, it was like 180 yards plus and a win. So if they're able to run the ball, obviously everything works off of that. They're able to be in second and short, third and manageables, and that's whenever Cliff is really be able to draw some creative stuff up and really get things going. So, I expect them hopefully to, like you said, the one big thing is, like you said, the big plays and just receivers running wide open or with a lot of separation. But I hopefully with Lattimore coming into this defense and them getting a bye week to look at the film, insert Lattimore, and say, okay, this is how we're going to sew this up. This is how we're going to shore this up, and we're going to be able to do this on top of that with a guy like Lattimore. I think that hopefully the defense will play even better in 2 weeks.
And one other one to add on to that is the kicker, where Zane Gonzalez was 0 for 2 on field goals today. And obviously, it's funny because I see everyone tweeting, like, why can't we just have a kicker? Why? Well, we did, right? He had one bad game, and then we sent him on IR, and so now we have to wait for at least 4 weeks to be able to get him back. But the point being is, like, the grass ain't always greener on the other side, and that's one thing that we have to take away. This is a common thing for Washington, where after a bad game, I know he got injured during the game with his groin. Dan Quinn addressed it. My whole point being is, as a fan base, we typically do this, where we get on the kicker for a bad game, and then we're like, okay, well, let's go to somebody else, and then that person falls short, and we're like, okay, what's going? Well, calm down. You know what I'm saying?
I will
And
tell you this: it's not a good look, though. This is not a good way for Gonzalez to keep his citizenship before January 20th. He's got until January 20th to get it right. And if he doesn't, then sorry, you're
I'll
out, dude.
say also, side note, I think Kime tweeted out they've already brought him up like 3 or 4 times or something like that. So they can't send him back down to the practice squad. So they either got to keep him on the 53 or they got to bring another kicker in, release him, and then they got a new kicker going forward till Cyber comes back. So
Right.
to your point, just I know people are going to get on Gonzalez and whatever, but sometimes the grass ain't greener. Just stick with the guy that's been semi-solid behind the guy that was super solid before the injury. So let's just
I
see how
will
it goes.
continue to say Seibert looked sleep deprived in that Dallas game. That was crazy. But let's get into our first question. This one from the Colonel Hall. He says, I don't understand. Where was this offensive production last week against Dallas? We seem to be moving at will.
Yeah, it just goes with, like the run game. I think the run game is a big thing. I know Kyle's like inside, just like jumping for joy, like I told you. But yeah, it's the run game, honestly. CBS put the graphic up 180 yards plus or whatever it was in their wins in the rushing game, rushing yards per game, under 100 yards per game rushing when they've lost games. So, and then obviously I think the key is also a healthy Brian Robinson. Whenever Brian Robinson, I don't know how he came back from that crazy looking injury last week and played
He should
already,
have broke
but
his ankle. He should
yeah, that
have.
was crazy. He's literally like the Man of Steel or something. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, for him to be back, I think that obviously the offense and not only the rushing offense, but the offense as a whole kind of flows through him. He gets everything going. He kind of gets the identity of the offense going. They want to be a physical team, run downhill like Dan Quinn always talks about. So he gets that going with the offense. Then Jaden's able to run the quarterback option and the keeper game off of that. Play action game starts working off of that. And then you got a guy like Terry who gets the big plays down the field and also gives the offense a lot of life and a lot of energy. So, yeah, I think that last week, obviously, the last couple of weeks have been meh, but I think the key to all this has been Brian Robinson. When he's healthy and he's going, this offense and this team is a totally different offense.
I will go a different approach, Colonel. I do think it has a lot to do with the offensive line. Me personally, as a former offensive lineman and defensive lineman, I personally believe if your offensive line is run blocking very well, it doesn't matter who you typically have at running back, as long as they can see the lanes and be able to run through them. And I think what's indicative of that is what C-Rod was able to do in this game. And so I think the big difference is the offensive line. I'm not going to say last week was they weren't on their top of their game. Obviously they weren't, but it wasn't like, I just think that this was back to their MO and their identity. Whereas they started in this game throwing the ball to Terry, and it was like a quick hitch. Get
Started
him
on
the
the right and
Yeah.
threw a quick tackle. Like Cliff was like listening to everyone, like, "Oh, you want me to change him up? Watch this."
Yeah, exactly. And so then they get the ball to him, then the next one to Noah Brown, and then the 39-yard run by Brian Robinson. And so I think that ultimately it's running the football well and effectively is the big difference here, where it just makes everything easier. And obviously the turnovers helped immensely. Being able to put them in the plus category in the opposing defense's side of the field, and they're kind of on their heels automatically. Whereas Washington going against the Steelers and others, yeah, they had those opportunities, but they weren't able to capitalize on it because the running game was not there. And also, I think that Jaden Daniels is playing one really, really well right now. He's very accurate, and when he is inaccurate, it does lead to turnovers. But for the most part, he is humming at this point in time. Terry McLaurin, 8 receptions for 73 yards, 2 touchdowns on 8 targets.
Yeah.
Say it with me. Elite. Elite.
Also, it seems like during the last 3 games, like teams were able to generate pressure from the inside.
Yeah.
And they could never, the Titans never really could do that today, despite having like Simmons and stuff, who's obviously very good, but they could never really get that going. It's because I think the run game kind of kept them off balance and running it off tackle, and starting with those big throws to Terry early on, I think was huge. So it seems that that's kind of been our kryptonite, but the way that the interior kind of stepped up, they never really got to get that going.
Yeah, and this was a very good defense coming into this game. We knew that, but Washington really inflicted their will upon them.
No. It's just the Titans. They're a bad team. Washington, they only beat the bad teams.
Who's saying that?
Everyone. It
I
was
don't
like
know.
I
I
saw
saw
Mike Jones on Twitter like,
from the Junkies saying
bad
something like
team,
that
or is
too.
just Washington getting back on track, or is this a bad team? And
Yeah.
everyone started dropping like, come on, man. Everyone was talking about this defense and how they were coming off this and that and Will Levis and da-da-da-da-da. Now all of a sudden it's
that
it's just the
that alleged heroin addict EB, I said alleged from the Junkie said something like that too, where he was like, "It's the Titans." It's like, yeah, and that's what you're supposed to do to these bad teams. Now, stop chasing that dragon. Put the needle down.
He says that like we didn't just lose to the Cowboys last week. You know what I mean? Who is right now not a very good football team, regardless of what Micah Parsons says. We coming. That's great, man. Good job. You got to play us again. All my point here is the Titans defensively were like top 15 against the run and against the pass.
They were top 10 against both of them, I believe, and then they were like 28 points per game or something
like that.
But the thing is that they were bad at was points per game, and what they were talking about in the Discord, like how is that possible? My point being is their offense, especially when what's his face was in there, the dude who got his helmet.
Mason Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph was in there. They were throwing a lot of turnovers. They were having a lot of turnovers, which allows the opposing offense short fields to score. And so that's why you're very good in yardage, but you're giving up a lot of points per game. Doesn't take anything away from their defense. They're hard to run move the chains against. But when their offense gives it up like that, it's very easy to score points, easier, so to speak. But we saw last week when Washington had those same sort of circumstances, they weren't able to do so. I think this game was much more so of Washington inflicting their will, getting back to what they did, and that's why it's so important for them feeling good going into this bye. So you're gaining that confidence back going in, but obviously you can't go in saying we played a perfect game. Very far from that. There was a lot of fans on Twitter about to jump off a cliff thinking that they were about to come back, right? You can learn from things, but it's good to know that you could go back to what you were doing. And this rest is obviously huge, which goes into our next question. And this one was submitted by Tony Franchise on Twitter. His question is, Reed, good win by the fellas going into the bye week. How crucial will this rest be going down the home stretch of the season for a playoff spot?
It's insanely important. I don't think you can emphasize that enough. Having it, like I said, having it this late in the season always sucks, but like before the bye week, but now that we have our bye week right now, you know that they're feeling good and they got to feel like it's almost an advantage at this point because now they're more rested than some of these other teams going down the stretch. So it sucks, but it's super important, especially to come out and have a win like they did today, kind of get back on track, going to the bye week feeling good, get some guys rested up. You got to feel good about that. And it's probably the second most important thing behind Kyle Ronick running a show, promoting them, I think.
Dick. It's incredibly important, especially with getting Lattimore back. And obviously the rest is very much needed. We have seen over the past 3 games, they definitely seemed worn out on a long-term kind of basis. Being able to have that extra week to get those knees rested, to feel better about yourself, but I think this win in particular is so important and crucial in that confidence being built going into it. Whereas I know the coaching staff is not going to let them sleep at the wheel, saying, okay, we're back to it, everything is fine. No. Coming out of that bye week, you much more so have to get back to what you did before you went into the bye. So as much as the rest and everything is very important for everybody, it's also very important not to lose sight of what made you good to come into this bye. And that is what you cannot lose sight of. But it's very important for the offensive line in particular, who badass was dealing with 3 separate injuries. It was like his wrist, his toe, his ribs. Gotti was probably dealing with some stuff. I know Cosme was not playing the best that he was the past 3 weeks, but today he really showed himself. I love on that extra point. He was he was being a bully up there, being able to push that guy, kind of getting that aggressiveness back. But all of those guys, especially even with Andrew Wiley with his head injury and being out with a concussion, another layer on this, right? And Austin Eckler coming back. So we're really feeling good about our guys today. And I think Jeremy McNichols deserves a shout out for how he ran today. He came in at kick return, subbed in for Austin Eckler, didn't cough up the football, was effective, was aggressive at being able to run the ball. Not as good as C-Rod, obviously, but he was fighting for extra yardage when it wasn't there. I think Jeremy McNichols definitely deserves a lot more credit. What about you, Hall?
Yeah, I think it's important for a team like this, like us right now, because we're a team that's been banged up. We've been playing some really physical teams for the past 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it's been. It's been a couple short weeks here and there, but yeah, I just think it's important for a team like us because we're in the thick of the playoff race, and this is when the weather starts getting a little bit colder out. This is when you're going to need guys the healthiest they can be at this point in the season. And while it does suck, yes, and for the third year in a row, they gave us a week 14 bye, but so which maybe next year they'll probably give us week 4, the complete opposite. But yeah, I think it's good for us right now because, like you said, the linemen need it. Guys that have a little bit of like aches and bruises, and guys that have been nicked up that haven't really been able to fully treat what them going on. Now they get a full extra week of let me a couple extra ice baths or a couple extra treatments in the locker room or whatever it may be to kind of really get them going for that December January stretch. So, and you get a guy like Lattimore back who hopefully is close to 100% as he can be because he's missed so much time and they've been so cautious with him as far as like really bringing him back and bringing him back. So, yeah, I think that it does kind of suck, but at the same time, it's kind of an advantage for us right now because we get a little bit of extra rest. And while other teams are kind of going to be reeling and aching and bruised up, we're going to be a little bit more healthier coming down the stretch where this is the most important time for of the season.
Also, it does need to be said, I saw a tweet before the game, I think it was yesterday, where is if Washington won the game, there was like a 95% chance they were making the playoffs, and if they had lost, that shot down to like 50%. And so on top of that, Tony, it's the fact that you're going into this bye week knowing you have a very good chance to make the playoffs. This isn't a time to chill. And I think that's probably a lot better than going into it saying we gave up 4 already on the losses, and now we're losing our playoff chances. Maybe you're forcing things a little bit more. We're much more so you're looking at this saying, we are going to be in the playoffs. We got to get back to what we were doing, and that's why this game in particular was huge in being able to feel that confidence, so to speak. Now the next question, the Discord. Reed, this one's from Tim Towner. Do you have a clue as to what exactly C-Rod does not do well enough to get more snaps?
What do you mean? Like, what does he not do good?
Yeah, like why isn't he getting more snaps? Do you have any clue as to why they wouldn't be giving him more?
I mean, I think it was just a combination. I think it was just having B-Rob and Eckler and then McNichols, who's been running very hard, doing a good job in front of him. I think it was just kind of a numbers game, but he's proven he's in that mold of like a McNichols, B-Rob, where he's bigger, he's tough to bring down, he runs hard, and that's really all you can ask for, especially somebody who's, fourth string running back coming in there, and you got to feel good with what he showed today. But to answer your question, I have no idea what he doesn't do well.
Yeah, because you can't point to like pass protection. You can't even point to his catching ability because he has shown to be good in that regard. Going back to earlier in the season, with C-Rod, I think it's much more so of how good Austin Eckler has been and Brian Robinson. Whereas like it's hard for Cliff Kingsbury to give him snaps when you have those two workhorses right there. And so it's hard for him to say, we're going to sit both of them, allow C-Rod to get the rock. I think it's much more so those guys being in front of him that doesn't give him that ability, and that's why Austin Eckler being out. And then late in this game having enough of a separation to really give it to C-Rod, who's like a lightning bolt, so to speak, off the bench, being able to come in there and just run hard, see the lanes, and get upfield. I think Anthony Lynn deserves a lot of credit for the running back room and what they've produced because they are playing out of their minds at this point. I know Brian Robinson is up there in career touchdowns. I know that C-Rod is playing probably the best football he has since he's been here in Washington. So it's hard to point to anything. I just think it's much more so about what we have in that room already, and it's hard to be able to give him more snaps.
Yeah, I mean that was going to be my answer. I think it's just hard to give him with such a finite amount of touches in the running game, and then when they use like a guy like Eckler in the passing game as well, there's only such a finite amount of touches you're going to get throughout the game, and then you got guys like Brian Robinson, who's the workhorse. He's the first and the second down guy, but also obviously can be used in the pass game. And then you got a guy like Eckler, who's highly productive, great coming out the backfield as like a third down guy, change of pace guy. It's hard, kind of hard to kind of get those extra snaps when you got, like you said, those two guys in front of you. And then maybe at the end of the day, there's a guy like McNichols in front of him who he's a 7, 8, 9 year vet, who whatever it's been, guy that's bounced around the league. Maybe they trust him a little bit more because he's seen a lot more than Rodriguez has throughout his career. So maybe they trust him on the field in certain packages or certain times or whatever it may be. But I think after the first couple games that Rodriguez was inserted, and then after this game, I think that they didn't really open their eyes and see that he deserves a little bit more playing time. But I think that the more playing time will come down the stretch. I think they're going to have some discussions during the bye week and say, hey, with Austin being on IR, obviously we got McNichols and we got B-Rob, but hey, let's flip the touches with, well, C-Rod got more touches than McNichols, but let's get a little bit more touches for C-Rod in there, with mixed in with B-Rob, and then maybe a little bit less for a guy like McNichols.
Yep. McDonald's McNichols. Now the next question from Tim Towner Hall.
McNichols is jacked, dude.
He is. How big of a difference maker will Lattimore make when he starts playing? And who will sit, Hall? Mikey, Benjamin St-Juste, or Noah?
I don't know. That's tough. I think we've seen Mike Davis get a little bit more snaps here and there because he's been practicing better than St-Juste has. But I think that maybe coming off the bye to let St-Juste clear his head a little bit. He didn't get like crazy beat today, so maybe they're like, all right, let's let it. I know, but I'm saying crazy beat. Like there wasn't like any like egregious type of like plays where he was like, it's just like, all right, here we go again. Oh, I know, trust me. But maybe they're gonna let him kind of maybe, all right, this is a little confidence builder for him. We had a week off, let him get his mind right. A guy like Lattimore comes in, everyone shifts down a notch. So like maybe we don't got to worry about a guy like St-Juste as much, even though we still do, because he still gets beat by really good number twos. But, yeah, who sits? I don't know. It'll probably be a rotation of St-Juste and Noah I. Those would be the two guys that are probably rotating in, sitting, whatever it may be. But, yeah, I expect Lattimore to come in. It's going to allow them to be able to play a lot more single, like coverage, man coverage, be able to bring a guy like Chin down into the box, and hopefully that'll help with the running game, because we got some tough running backs coming up, and Kamara, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley again, obviously. So, yeah, hopefully he helps with the running game as far as being able to load the box up, and a guy like Lattimore is able to lock up maybe half the field or focus on the team's number one and let the guys behind him kind of fall in line and play their game. So hopefully he adds to this defense, who's been on a little bit of a uptick after this game.
Yeah, and I think the difference-making aspect of it in the long-term deep passes, the big plays, is going to be huge. Let's just point that out. That's going to be the obvious here. He's one of those guys that does not allow it to happen. I've called him, when I interviewed with Logan, I said to Logan, it's almost like he's like the Bobby Wagner of the secondary that they've brought in, where a bigger, stockier kind of secondary member has seen a lot of football, a veteran coming in, and it knows where to be, what to do, and what not to do, right? As in regards to who's not going to be getting as much playing time, it sucks to say, but I think it's going to be Noah Igbenogany because look, he had a chance for an interception today. Yeah. And that thing was like, that was the perfect opportunity for Noah.
The breadbasket.
Dude, right in his chest. And like, that's one of those ducks that just falls to you. And obviously he was laying on the ground pissed off, but I would imagine Joe Witt sitting there screaming. If he had any hair, he'd be pulling it out saying, I need more interceptions. And like, that's one of those you have to come up with. And honestly, I said this as soon as we got Lattimore. I don't think Mikey needs to be pushed inside. As much as that was his thing in college, and it was early in the year, he has really found a home on the outside. He himself got beat on a deep ball, obviously. But that being said, if you have Lattimore in there and you could key in a little bit more on Mikey's side on that single high kind of defensive plays like you were talking about, Hall, I think it maybe can help that out a little bit. Because obviously Joe Witt loves to do that. He loves the single high. You see it on those long plays. As soon as they see that man coverage, they attack it. And the Lattimore in that regard is going to help out immensely. But I really don't think that Mikey needs to see less snaps. I know that they talked about a rotation with him and Benjamin St. Juice. I would not mind that. And maybe Benji finds a home on the inside. But he has been getting caught flat-footed way too much, man. Way too much.
Yeah, the Canadian clawler is going to be the one who sees his snaps trickle down. I mean, it's just at this point, like it's obvious. I think he's been splitting time with Mike Davis. He's the one who every week people are talking about how he got burned. He's all over the place. And Sanders still's come on so well on the outside. Nick Minogue, yeah, Benjamin St. Juice may possibly be a better corner, but for Igbenogin, the spot that he's playing inside, you don't hear his name called all the time, and that's what you want from a corner. I mean, that's always good.
Fair.
So it's going to be interesting, but I think it's going to be some form of rotation early on while Lattimore kind of gets his feet under him, and then Lattimore's going to take over that other side. Sanders Still's on one side, and then maybe, who knows, maybe Benjamin St. Juice finds a home for himself inside, but I don't think it'll start out that way.
Right. I agree with you. Now, the next question we have is from Deluxe in the Discord. Thank you, Deluxe. How about that B-Rob breakaway run? Last week, Terry. This week, B-Rob, Reed.
Yeah, dude, B-Rob wasn't even touched on that first quarter run. Like, I think even when he hit the hole, like, nobody touched him. And then at the end of the run, dude dove for him. He couldn't get him. So you got to love that. I mean, showing off that breakaway speed, like you said, like Terry did last week, which, hey, I'll take that all goddamn day. Do it every play. I'll be fine with that.
Yeah, and obviously his next question was, what did you see from the run game, as a follow-up question from last pod? I know we kind of already talked about it, but do you have anything to add?
Dominated. Just dominated. The offensive line was just opening up big holes. I know that there was a spot in the middle of the game where it wasn't getting it done, but like this offense is so dangerous where once you start getting that run game established, there's really no stopping it until the momentum just kind of dies down, because those big boys up front are opening up lanes, and with how hard as all these running backs run, every single running back that we've had this season runs the ball super hard. You don't want to tackle them, especially with cold weather coming up. Come on, man, it's game over. It's unfair.
Yeah, obviously early on in that game, Arch, they did a really good job of using the pullers. Obviously, they got out and being able to create those seals. But I think later on in the game, Tennessee started cheating up on it, and it was harder for us to gain those yardage. It was getting back to the no gains, 1 or 2 gains. And then that's where C-Rod comes into play, because C-Rod just really does hit the hole, like kind of like Reed, really hard, and it almost catches you by surprise to the point where he's able to get in that crease and just be able to run through it and pick you up 5 to 6 yards. Whereas a bigger guy like B-Rob, it's kind of hard to be able to fit his body in there. He's kind of like me, bigger dude than Reed. And so, like, that's why Reed is much more like C-Rod, where he's like the smaller stature, but he runs hard. He's able to get through. And so it's almost like with B-Rob, it's like a train, oversized train getting into a smaller tunnel, like in that Family Guy episode.
Like you every weekend.
Yeah. And so C-Rod is much more so being able just to fit himself in there. And then his vision has really been off the charts. But I think offensively, especially in the run game, they've done a very good job of getting their guys up their mark. I think Noah Brown deserves a lot of credit for his block on the B-Rob touchdown run. Another example of that second help in the secondary of being able to isolate that cornerback to the outside. And so through the run game, I just saw a lot more crisp blocks. I saw the eagerness, the inflicting the will, and just getting back to the basics of being able to push guys around, and then the running backs using the vision to find themselves in those holes.
Yeah, it's like the first drive was like the coaches and the players were like listening to sports talk radio and the fans where, Terry always lines up on the left side and he always catches passes on the right every time he lines up there. Why didn't they line him up more? First play of the game, pass to Terry on the right side. Third play of the game, B-Rob, he can't hit a home run. We need a guy that's a home run hitter. What does he do? It's not really a super home run, but 40-yard touchdown run where he just kind of runs past everyone. So that's why I said it was like one of those narrative killer games where it was just like, all right, we've been listening to what y'all been saying. We should have done it last week. Now we're going to do it this week. But, yeah, as far as you say, like the run game, I think they just got back to guys were just getting back to the basics of winning their one-on-ones, and really just blocking it up exactly how they drew it up as far as like, okay, like that first run of the game where it was just such an open hole, such a huge lane, guys pulling around, guys blocking perfectly. He doesn't even get touched till he's at the goal line, basically. So I just think it was back to the basics, guys winning their one-on-ones, guys dominating in the trenches. And yeah, like I said, I think it's when B Rob's in the game, I think the offensive line just got a little bit more like aggressiveness to them because B Rob runs with such aggression as well.
Yep,
Also, real
totally like
fast,
me.
it's so good to see them to like struggling all game against Dallas, but then at the end of the game they really got it going. They looked unstoppable there towards the end, and then to pick up right where they left off this week, that's got to feel good for them. That's got to be huge.
Yeah, it's funny because on Wednesday I talked about that, Reed, where like in that last 2 minutes against the Giants in the post game that I did that we were at Hall, I said like what I saw in that last 2 minutes, I really could see this offense like that being a confidence builder into these next couple games and to really show what they can do. And obviously they went on a tear from that. And then that last 2 minutes against Dallas, it same thing. It almost seems like that confidence is built to let's just get back to what we do, stop overthinking things, and just do what we do. Get the ball in the playmaker's hands. A lot of credit to Cliff Kingsbury running Terry on slant routes, getting him the ball, being able to create first downs and move the chains. Noah Brown unfortunately got hurt on that one pass to his ribs. Hopefully he's okay heading into it. But Diami Brown coming through on those screen plays and even had one try to get deep on against two deep, and that was difficult for him to make. But another guy is coming in clutch. Luke McCaffrey on that fourth down, being able to move the chains. So the passing game definitely does seem like it's back to normal. And I've said this for a while, Hall. You know this. It all stems from the running game. If the running game is moving well, everything else really does do well. Now, the last question we have, we kind of already answered this, but the Colonel asked him, okay, Reed? And the Colonel asked, we've got 2 weeks to figure out our defensive secondary. How do you envision Lattimore changing our defensive scheme?
He's a Marshawn Lattimore is a little he's kind of like Tyrann Mathieu in that he's a honey badger and that he's super feisty. He's super, like you said, you talked about him kind of being like a Bobby Wagner type of the secondary, like a little thicker build, just scrappy as hell. And that's really what our secondary needs. I mean, you go out there with the Canadian Claw or Benjamin St. Juice out there just being as nice as possible. Like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to step on your foot there, pal. You know, like you need to you need some attitude back there, and that's what he's going to bring.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, the next question from the Colonel Hall. 8 days ago, Chris Rodriguez wasn't on the team. Today, he had a career rushing high and a touchdown for us. Are we stupid?
Nah. I mean, it comes down to it. Honestly, it sucks, but it's a business game, and it's always a numbers game at the end of the day. And the good thing about this league is it's a next man up. It's a next man up type of league, and you're just one call away from getting the opportunity that to show that you deserve to be on a roster for good, or at least on a practice squad for good. And I think that Chris Rodriguez is one of those guys where it probably hurt them to cut him. They probably didn't want to cut him, but they also knew that, hey, we can cut this guy and probably bring him back to the practice squad. It just so happened that Brian Robinson gets injured when they cut him. It's just bad timing. But again, kudos to him for staying ready, and kudos to Anthony Lynn and the offensive line for uh, killing and dominating the run game today.
Yep, absolutely. And Terry McLaurin, with 9 touchdowns so far this season? I think it's getting up. That's a career high for him.
Yep.
And he is really reaping the benefits of this offense performing well. Last question that we have, Reed. I know I don't want you to fall asleep. Do we hear any? This is from Deluxe in Discord. Do we hear of any extensions during the bye week? Fowler, Chin, anyone else?
Sorry, I'm super sick right now. My entire family's sick as hell.
Me too,
And
man. Today
not
was
just
the
a cool
worst
way.
one. I woke up this morning and I was like,
Dude, I'm leaking. James is like borderline rash underneath his nose from so much snot being under there, and it's constantly on the way bit. But is there any exceptions? I hope so. I want to bring back. I mean, especially Jeremy Chin. Dante Fowler's fantastic, and they couldn't they couldn't upset me if they re-signed any of these guys. Let me just tell you that much right now.
and the weird thing was that ESPN didn't log Dante Fowler as having a sack. Those tackle for losses that he did have on Levis, I guess they
That one, Levis, the one, are you thinking the one where Levis is like clearly about to run the ball?
yeah, and like but
Yeah, that wouldn't be a sack though.
yeah,
That makes
they
sense.
didn't label it any of a sack, obviously, but he's been a force, and he has. This is the first time that Washington has had, I think, 2 separate DNs having 8 sacks in a
Two
season.
players, just two players since Arakpo and Kerrigan or something, right?
It was Kerrigan and Trent Murphy.
Oh God,
Yeah.
ew, two crackers.
Yeah,
What the hell?
which goes to show. But I think Dante Fowler has deserved it. The way that he has played this season really surprised me. I kind of poo-pooed it originally. I didn't know what we'd be getting out of him. But obviously Dan Quinn knows Dante Fowler going back to their days at Florida. They just get each other, and obviously Dan Quinn offers that in knowing who Dante Fowler is. And if they're comfortable with giving an extension, do it. Jeremy Chin didn't have his best game of the year today, but again was like we've seen his presence and the energy and the hit last week that he had on the wide receiver to jar that ball loose. I think Jeremy Chin has earned that right. And given with what we don't know what's going to go on at free safety, they brought in Percy Butler when Quan Martin got injured. I think shoring up that safety is going to be very important heading into the next year or so. So I wouldn't be surprised to see. I wouldn't be mad at either one of those guys, to be honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at it, but I don't see any extensions coming during the bye week. I think that first of all, the players themselves would be like, I'm on a hot streak right now. Let me keep playing down the stretch and kind of try to keep increasing my payday come the off season, or at least the agent should be telling the players that like, hey, like,
Unless the players know that they're overperforming and they're like, there's no chance of
cool.
fucking
Yeah,
strike
yeah.
while the iron's hot. Dude.
I mean,
So I'm not this guy.
That's
all
true. That's
players
true.
like want to be able to
That would
get
never
some
happen.
cash in their wallet, especially heading into Christmas, my dude. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
I
Yeah,
also-
because I do know that they're struggling to afford Christmas for their families.
Right. But I also think that I don't think there's any extensions coming right now, just because they know that they probably have a good sense of the guys. They've been talking to their agents and whatnot. Adam Peters is known around the league to be having a really good relationship with guys, agents, and whatnot. And to your point, these guys love Dan Quinn. Jeremy Chin said he came here because he wanted to play for Dan Quinn. And so I think he's kind of like a Luvu guy where he's like, I wish I would have played my whole career under Dan Quinn. So I think even if there's no extensions this week or this bye week, which I don't think there will be, I think going into the offseason, I think we'll have number one top priority at them to re-sign them because of their time here. Like you said, Dante Fowler's followed Dan Quinn literally almost everywhere he's been at this point in his career.
Yeah.
And a guy like Jeremy Chin, like I said, he's having a career year, a
He wanted to
renaissance
play
type.
with them.
Yeah,
That's why he
renaissance
came
type
here.
career.
Yeah.
And I think he loves playing for Joe Witt. I think that he loves the guys in the DB room and in the DB room and the defense. And I think that Jeremy Chin will be, I want to re-sign here. Let's get it done. No matter what the numbers are, we'll work themselves out. But I do think those are two guys that are definitely top priority when it comes to extensions coming up for 2025.
How bad do you guys feel for Trevor Lawrence? I thought he was dead, dude.
Yeah,
that
he's
was
crazy.
bad.
He threw up the special needs fucking grabbing him. He threw up that, and I was like, "Damn, dude!" I can say it. It was bad, man. There's so many fights in football this weekend. What the hell?
Yeah,
What the heck is
football
going on?
Yeah,
out
college
there?
football was crazy.
College football. It was literally every
rivalry game was like a fight.
That Ohio State one, like every single, like I've heard a lot of coaches say,
pepper sprayed.
yeah, like like that was crazy. Like, they came in guns blazing with that stuff. They were getting the cameramans with it. They didn't care. But all I've heard coaches say, if you're gonna fight like that, you better put it in the game. And I just thought that was the very funny aspect of it. Like, oh, now you want to fight, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Could you imagine if they did that during the game? What the coaches would say to them?
Well, I mean, like that, you should put that energy into
game.
winning the game rather than trying to fight everybody.
Yeah.
But it is hysterical. I thought it was hysterical. It's not funny that everyone's fighting. I'm just saying it's hysterical.
It's pretty. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny.
But I'm glad that Hall, you guys got the dub. I know Terry McLaurin said that he lost a bet, and Terry McLaurin said to the team that it was a team win, and he's absolutely right. As much as last week was a total team loss in the way that they lost that game in all three phases, this one was completely different. Special teams coming up with those turnovers that they obviously needed, not allowing any big plays. You'd like for Zane Gonzalez to do better, but at the end of the day, offense came prepared. They did their thing. Defense came out guns blazing, forcing turnovers, getting off the field early and often. This was a total team win, and Terry McLaurin is absolutely right. All right, everybody, it's going to wrap us up for this episode. We will see you guys again on Wednesday. If you've made it this far, you're a frickin' champion. We appreciate you guys. I'm Kyle.
Let's go have a baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Which tomorrow you're going in, right?
Now we're going in tonight.
Oh, snap. All right,
No,
man.
hell
Well,
yeah, dude.
God bless you. I'll be praying for you.
Don't be
Hopefully it's a
nervous. It's
very
not like your
easy
life's about to change completely.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a very easy process for you, obviously. Just be prepared to be in there and being able to console Courtney. Try not to get yourself killed. Don't say anything stupid. Just,
Yeah.
give her massages and all of
That's
that
a
stuff.
daily thing, so I mean.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. You're very prepared in that regard. But obviously, congratulations to you, brother. Keep us updated on how that's going.
Hell yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys again on Wednesday. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.